So We All Stand Tall is a success. Does its job. 2011, it's a big part of, or a small part of, the September 11th, 2011 ceremonies. But to us, it's a big deal because we got to partake. And that's a proud moment. 2012, it's still kind of there. It's lingering, hasn't burned off yet. If I'm doing a rare headline appearance someplace, I'm singing it. No big deal. It's getting airplay still. It's pretty cool. 2013 rolls around, and Mad Mike of Manheads Records tells everybody on the label, I want new material from all of you first and second quarters of the new year. So I'm like, that's a great idea. And he says, yeah, I mean from everybody. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. I'm looking at the list and going, this guy is going to do great. This band's going to be fantastic. He's like, you left out one party. And I looked at him and said, who? He just looks at me, he shakes his head and laughs. You met me too. Wait a minute, this was a one-time thing. Apparently not. So, I'm like, all right. I demo a song. It's lukewarm. He's like, what else do you have? So I'm like, I've been writing for other people. I haven't been writing for myself. But I had this idea from way back in 2006. And I wrote it originally for a girl who was doing country music at the time, Nashville, pop crossover, whatever you call it. She's no longer active in music. Do you see a recurring theme here with people I run into? I might be the kiss of death. I don't know. I think I just retire aspiring music stars. I don't know. But I had this idea laying around, and I had to adapt it, of course, to my style, which at the time was going to be, I don't know, rock, pop rock, adult contemporary. I don't know what you'd call it, but it wound up a different style than what it would have been for this female artist. And I wanted to do a quick cutaway. See how slick I was there? Just to give you an idea of what this sounded like back in 2006 when I pitched it as a Nashville style song. And other than tailoring it to a female vocal and having it a bit more jangly, it's almost identical as far as the chorus goes. And, I was still hammering out the lyrics to the verse, but I bridged the gaps with a whole lot of da-das. And, for the most part, it really hasn't changed all that much. And just to give you an idea of what it sounded like back then, it went something like this. Baby, it's you. You're the kiss at the end of the movie. You're the sun that sets at the end of the day. You're the reason that I'm lying awake. You're the icing on the cake, the golden shimmer on the lake, the only heart I wanna take. Baby, it's you. So for the most part, it remained unchanged. I don't know what happened to the golden shimmer on the lake. It just became the shimmer during the tweaking process. But for the most part, what it was back then is what it remained. So to add a wrinkle to this story, I had told a friend of mine what I was up to as far as writing a new song and releasing a new single. He's a retired record executive, so right away I piqued his interest, and I explained to him what was going on, and I told him what my plans were. He liked the idea of resuscitating this song because he liked the premise of the song, and he listened to what I had to say, and he said, could I offer you some advice? And I said, sure. He said, first of all, I really wish I had the budget to send you to the Bahamas for 3 weeks to work on this, because you shouldn't listen to any outside influences. Don't listen to the radio. MTV is not an issue because they don't play videos anymore. He said, but just try to lock yourself away from any musical influences and be yourself. Write a Ray Power song. Don't worry about getting it on the charts. Don't worry about the last song you heard on the radio. And I knew all that stuff, but it's good to hear. And He said, if you write from your heart and you try to write a Ray Powers song, you're going to write a great song. So I said, well, thank you. That's great advice. Best advice I ever had received. And he said, while we're at it, can I issue you a little challenge? And I said, other than being 42 and trying to release a single? Sure, why not? Let's just steer into it at this point. He said, no, this will be a lot of fun. So I said, sure. He said, I want you to cite 3 major influences in your career. And I'm not just talking about my first concert was Queen, and my first rock t-shirt was Van Halen, and my first record was a Kiss record. I mean, 3 recording artists that you can honestly say had a profound impact as far as you being right here, right now, as a professional in show business. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Makes you dig a little deeper and think about it. And that was the whole idea of the exercise. He says, try to be as diverse as possible. If you're able to, try to pick from 3 different musical styles, if that's possible. So, and it was because I had groups that I loved, and I listened to, my dad's music growing up from the time I was a toddler. So I thought about it without trying to think about it too hard, because I had over 100 I could choose from, really. And I said, well, my favorite rock band of all time is probably Def Leppard, if I had to choose one. And at the time that I heard Rock of Ages for the first time, I was 12 going on 13. And I said, well, I've got to grow my hair long, and I've got to get this guitar, and I've got to do this. And if I want to be in a rock band, got to wear clothes that are too tight and everything else. And then little did I realize later on down the line, the production of those records, I was absolutely enamored with that. The way Mutt Lange taught Def Leppard how to create a record. Same with AC/DC, same with anybody he worked with. I was drawn to that style. Now, again, we didn't know why. We didn't know it was because Mutt Lange was producing these records, but they were fantastic. So I gave him Def Leppard as one. He said, perfect. I knew you were going to pick them. Who else do you have? And I said, well, again, I could choose from a ton of people, but let's go with the Bee Gees. He said, great. Why the Bee Gees? They wrote, produced, recorded, played their own instruments. My dad was playing Bee Gees records in the house from the time I could remember. Gotta Get a Message was probably the first song we sang together, with the 45s playing. He said, fantastic. Give me a third one. And again, try to be diverse. Try going into like left field in this one. Okay. Well, at this time, I was touring with a Motown Revue. And to this day, I still am. I'm playing a lot of dates on the road still. But I got to play bass in a Motown Revue in theaters, a big time show. And I told him this, and he says, well, there you go. Who do you have as far as a Motown influence? I said, well, you could pick almost anybody. And getting to emulate James Jamerson on stage and playing those amazing bass lines, there is no Motown without James Jamerson, I'm sorry. With due respect to everybody else who was, involved in making those great records. But I get to be James Jamerson every night. Are you kidding me? He's like, great, pick one of those groups. Top of my head, I'll go with the Four Tops, because we played probably more Four Tops in our set than anybody else. I said, well, okay, great. You got your 3 artists. Now I want you to take the song you're working on, and I want you to try to take every one of those people that you mentioned and pay a very, very subtle tribute in your song to those 3 artists. Try to work something in where you can give a little nod to all 3 of those. I said, wow. I honestly didn't see that coming. I didn't know where he was going with that. But I just thought about it for a minute. And I said, okay. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but I'm sure as hell going to try. So I mentioned that I accepted this challenge as far as acknowledging these 3 elements that helped me define this song and my career and everything else. And out of those 3 that I had cited, the Bee Gees reference is probably the one that's the most abstract, as far as there's no glaring, obvious part where you could say, there's the Bee Gees part of the song. It was more an organic thing where I wasn't even trying to be, cognizant about, all right, now I'm going to lay down the Bee Gees part. You're going to hear this. It didn't happen that way. As I was laying tracks down, you listen back and go, oh, there it is. There's something that I would definitely hear in a Bee Gees song. Let me give you an example since I'm holding the guitar. This one is probably the most, I would say, obscure. But if I explain it to you, maybe you'll agree. I don't know. But this part right here. Those simple chords. Just that natural and that suspended fourth. Those. Something that you would hear maybe in a track off the Still Waters album. I don't know. Again, to me, it just made sense. But the more glaring example would be the megaton of vocals that I recorded for this song, because I tracked over 30 vocal tracks. And that's no exaggeration. The lead track and stacks of harmonies and counterparts and things like that, added all up, it's well over 30 tracks that I recorded. And I did them all myself. And the biggest compliment I had gotten to date was when someone had said, what about the tracks that you didn't do? The ones that were obviously too high or whatever. And I'm like, no, I did them all. I'm like, not all of them. Come on, who did the rest? Right there, it's like, no, I really did those. And thank you for doubting me on that. That just shows, how hard I had to work to get those parts. Because as a baritone, even with a falsetto register, some of those are really tough. And then you have to duplicate them, and people don't realize how many tracks go into recording, these songs on these records. But, and not everybody, but for the most part, it's a lot more work than people realize. And I spent 4 days just arranging those backing vocals. Forget about putting them down. Actually, I put them down rather quickly and efficiently. And I have to say, it was a lot of fun to lay down those backing vocals. And there, if you listen to a lot of the call and answer on the choruses of It's You, there maybe you'll hear it, and maybe it's with my suggestion, maybe you'll hear it on your own. But you go, okay, that's definitely something I would hear in a Bee Gees song. And to me, when I played it for my friend, he's like, oh yeah. He's like, no doubt about it. I was like, mission accomplished. At least 1/3 of it anyway. And speaking of Def Leppard as a profound influence on this track, I mean, whether it was intentional, unintentional, challenge, no challenge, it didn't really matter. This was becoming a very dense record with a lot of tracks. Just like Mutt Lange and Def Leppard had put together those records, Hysteria, Pyromania, these little simple parts that when you play them in isolation, they sound very nondescript. But like ingredients in a stew, when you mix them all together, you had this conglomerate of flavor and sound. It was just this big sounding record. And It's You, I have to be honest, it's my favorite sounding record to date because everything just worked. By the time I brought John Esposito in to do lead guitar work, we had a very, very tight window. He was, in fact, the very last thing to go on this record. We had the keeper vocals already done, and we had a very tight window with the mixing deadline. We had to get this out to get mixed because we had a print deadline. I had tour dates lined up. Everything had to be on schedule. So by the time I brought John in, we only had a couple of hours together. But since he had the track a couple of days earlier, the basic tracks to work with, he came in and just nailed everything one shot. Just money. Everything he touched. These little simple parts, stuff I never would have thought to put on here. It was like, wow, this is just perfect. And he knew exactly what to put where, so it was breathing and it wasn't stepping on other parts. So you really, really thought the stuff out. It was just really just magic. And the one thing we had to address was a main signature guitar lick, the main melodic guitar part that you hear all throughout the song. We didn't have that, only he didn't know that. At the time he came in, this was the main guitar line. And I mentioned Def Leppard for a reason. this is what we had sitting on top. Now, I mean, we wanted to pay tribute to Def Leppard, not plagiarize them. That may not be lick for lick, exact note for note, but it's damn close. If I play that, you're thinking Hysteria, title cut. Okay. Now, we left that track in there, but it's buried and it's mixed well so that it's not sitting right on top. But we needed something to be, that defining melodic guitar line to go with the vocal melody. And I had nothing. So when John looks up at me and he says, "What do you have?" I had nothing. But I tried to put on the brave poker face. I'm like, well, what about this? And as I said that, I'm like spinning through my, mental capacity for, riffs or whatever. I'm like, come on, I need something. And thank God, it just hit me like a thunderbolt. And I was like, well, what about this? In fact, I think I hummed it to him. And obviously he plays it a lot better than I do, but, that's just to get the point across. He's like, that's perfect. Really catchy, and it stuck. So that became the signature line. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to address my absolute favorite part that he put down. And it's my favorite part, period, to this song. And being that this is my favorite song of mine, that's saying something. It's this simple little part. Let me play it where I can actually demonstrate both parts. Now watch, this is the verse part, and it works here. Same part, same guitar part, different part of the song, and it works. So simple. I just thought I'd share that with you because it was such a cool part to this song. And every time I hear this song playing, that's what I listen for. I mean, with all those stacks of vocals and everything else, I enjoy those. Sometimes I'll play them back too. I know I'm that guy that listens to my own music and goes, wow, this is pretty cool. But isn't that better than not being able to listen to it at all? But I just thought I'd share that with you because I thought that was just really cool. Thanks for indulging me. So I gave you Def Leppard. I gave you the Bee Gees. Now I had to move over to the keyboard here. Hope you can see all this. Because I have to give you the Four Tops with Ask the Lonely. And it's a real quick 3-chord progression. But it's the signature lick to the song. So it's the pickup and it's the start of the chorus. So it wasn't like you weren't going to pick it up. It wasn't like it wasn't recognizable. That was the whole point, to pay tribute to that. Just a little bit, just a hint. And it happens during the break, and there's no words covering it, so it's all by itself with orchestration on it. I snuck it in right here. That's it. Just enough so you could, pick that out. And I think the original goes something like... But I love that anticipate. Resolve. I think that's how it goes. Something like that. But I thought that was really cool, and I thought I'd share that with you.